The title of the sermon today is called Bet Shean. Have you ever heard of Bet Shean? No? No? I wouldn't expect you to. It is in the Bible, but it's in the Bible under a different name. And it's not a primary location, but it's an extremely fascinating location in Israel. And so we're going to be taking a look at Bet Shean. So Bet Shean. Bet Shean is believed to be one of the, and this is from Wikipedia, believed to be one of the oldest cities in the area. So you may have heard of Jericho. Jericho was there for a long time. In fact, probably older than Bet Shean. But Bet Shean has been there also quite a long time. And it played a really important role in Israel because of its location. If you actually look at a map, what you will discover is the location of Bet Shean. You'll see on this map here, number 3, if you have your thing, you'll actually see Bet Shean right up. It's right underneath Issachar, up at the top. You'll see there is a location called Bet Shean. So it's maybe a little. It's sort of to the right and above Manasseh, and it's relatively close to the River Jordan, if you can make out sort of where that is. And so if you actually look at another map we have, what you will see is the Jordan River Valley coming down. So you see up at the top, you see the Lake of Galilee. Oh yeah, we're on another map. You see the Lake of Galilee up at the top, and the Jordan River comes all the way down through the Rift Valley, and then it gets down to, you see that body of water down at the bottom? That's the Dead Sea. So we've got the Jordan, the Sea of Galilee, the Jordan River continues down through, and eventually gets to the Dead Sea. Well, partway down, there's a darker area here that's the Jezreel Valley, and I'm going to talk about that, I hope, at some point a little bit more. But the connection between the Jezreel Valley and the River Jordan is right about there, and then that particular location is where the city was built. So it's built between the Jordan Valley, which you saw coming all the way down, the Rift Valley, and this other very famous valley called the Jezreel Valley that leads out to the coast. And this city was built right at the point where they connect. So it was a very important military location. So it's been there for a very long time. So Bet Shean contains remnants of the ancient times, and then eventually the Canaanites came, and then they built some structures on top of this mound. Then finally it came under Egyptian rule in the late Bronze Age, and it served as a major hub of Egyptian control over that part of Israel for quite a long time. Then eventually it came under the control of the Israelites under David and Saul and Solomon and so on. And eventually it fell to the Philistines. So the Philistines controlled that area for a while as well. During the time of Saul, they certainly had control there. And eventually his body, when Saul had fought the Philistines and he died, the city is mentioned in the Bible. So we have that fight happened at that area, at the juxtaposition of the Jordan River Valley and the Jezreel, where the Jezreel Valley kind of ends. Well, it's ended before that, but it's a connection spot between the two, and that's around where the fight took place between the Israelites under Saul and the Philistines. So let's read in the scripture what it says. It says in 1 Samuel 31, starting at verse 1, it says, "Now the Philistines attacked Israel, and the men of Israel fled before them. Many were slaughtered on the slopes of Mount Gilboa. The Philistines closed in on Saul and his sons, and they killed 3 of his sons, Jonathan, Abinadab, and Mishka. The fighting grew very fierce around Saul, and the Philistine archers caught up and wounded him severely. Saul groaned to his armor-bearer, 'Take your sword and kill me before these pagan Philistines come to run me through and taunt and torture me.' But his armor-bearer was afraid and would not do it. So Saul took his own sword and fell on it. When his armor-bearer realized that Saul was dead, he fell on his own sword and died beside the king. So Saul, his 3 sons, his armor-bearer, and his troops all died together that same day. When the Israelites on the other side of the Jezreel Valley and beyond the Jordan saw the Israelite army had fled and that Saul and his sons were dead, they abandoned their towns and fled. So the Philistines moved in and occupied their towns. The next day, when the Philistines went out to strip the dead, they found the bodies of Saul and his 3 sons on Mount Gilboa. So they cut off Saul's head and stripped off his armor. Then they proclaimed the good news of Saul's death in their pagan temple and to the people throughout the land of Philistia. They placed his armor in the temple of Ashtoreth, and they fastened his body to the wall of the city of Bet-Shan. Bet-Shan, why did they attach it to the city of Bet-Shan? Because that was the city that was the same one that we're talking about. It was right there. It was an important city, and so that's where they took Saul and put his body up. Eventually, people from across the Jordan heard about this. In verse 11 it says, "But when the people of Jabesh-Gilead heard what the Philistines had done to Saul, all their mighty warriors traveled through the night to Bet-Shan and took the bodies of Saul and his sons down from the wall. They brought them to Jabesh, where they burned the bodies. They took their bones and buried them beneath the tamarisk tree at Jabesh, and they fasted for 7 days." So we have this situation where it was a very, very important city. The battle has just taken place around the city. The Philistines take the bodies of Saul and his sons and put them on the city walls. And the people across the Jordan come across the valley up to the city walls and take them down and take them back across the Jordan to the other side in order to go through the proper burial. After the Marnonic, the period of Saul and David and so on, what happened is there was a Hellenistic period. So eventually the Greeks came in. And then it was Greek for a while, and then eventually it came under the Roman rule. This is all from Wikipedia. And they called it a different name. They called it Psychopolis. It was a free and leading city in the area. In fact, it was the most important city as part of the Decapolis. And the Decapolis was a bunch of Roman cities the Romans had planted. Of all the cities they planted, most of them were on the other side of the Jordan, but this one was on the near side of the Jordan. And it was the most important city, the leading city of all the 10 that they did. So it was a very important spot. Eventually it came under Byzantine rule and served as the capital of the province of Palestina, and had a mixed population of Christians, pagans, and Jews and Samaritans. After the Arab conquest in 634, and following a series of devastating earthquakes, notably in 749, the city lost its prominence and became a medium-sized country town. Well, really, at that point, it became absolutely devastated, and they scraped out a little bit of a town out of it, but there wasn't a lot left. But it was a very important city for a long, long time. So I'm going to take you through a trip of some of the stuff that I just talked about, and we're going to see the pictures here. So I'll now invite you to move to a viewing location where you can see it. So here you can see where it's actually located here. So this is the Jezreel Valley, which is very, very important. And they got a different name there, but that's the Jezreel Valley at that point. Here's the Jordan, the Rift Valley with the Jordan River going through it. And there's a path that goes right between the two. And right there, right in the middle of that path, is where this city was created. So you can see where the arrow is. So it was a very important juncture. You could control the countryside. You could control who's coming and going. You could tax people militarily. It could be a stronghold to prevent people, because this was a natural path for people to come through here and then up and down through the Jordan River. So you could control a lot of what was going on by holding on to that spot. This was a picture, a model when we went there. So when we arrived there, at the entranceway, there was a model that you could take pictures of. So I took a bunch of pictures of them, and you'll actually see right there, I've got a circle around a mound. It might be a little bit difficult to see, but it's actually up higher than the surrounding area. So the area in behind is where eventually the Roman city took place. So you can see a lot of structures and things all the way around there. But this was sort of where things started, up on that hill. And I'm going to show you what it looks like from that hill here in a second. So this is where things started, and eventually the Romans and the Byzantines and so on went all the way around the hill, and the hill was, to some extent at that point, the hill was not nearly as important as the rest of the area. So if we take a look at here, there's what the view looks like from the top. So that's a picture I took from the top of the hill. And what you can see is you can see off into the distance, you can see the mountains that surround that area. But you could control the location, because you see off into the distance here, you'll see back over here, well, it's hard to maybe make out, but basically that's the Jordan River area. So up on top of this hill, you had a lot of control, because they weren't going to go by you on the mountains. They'd have to go through the valley, which is right underneath you, and then you could see way out into the Jordan valley, so you could potentially see troops moving or something happening way out there. So it gave you a commanding view of the of the whole area. And this is much steeper than it looks like. I mean, it may look a little bit steep there, but this is really, really steep. It's a really good defensive position up on top of that a mound. Now, while we're up on top of the mound, the first thing they took us to was or what we saw up there was a temple, a Canaanite temple. So this was way, way back in the 5th to the 12th millennium, so a long time ago, 15th BC to 12 BC, approximately 1200 BC. So it was a long, long time ago, and they had actual site for, what does it say? It had a site for, I think it's temples. Yeah, temples and rituals. So up in here, this is all that remains of it. So it's not, this part's not impressive. So, but this is approximately.
Michael, on that last one, what was that red and white thing in the middle?
Oh, that was a post. So there was a post out front to help us identify as we were going through the trip. So they'd have these posts or signs at different points, and it would have written on it what you were actually looking at. Because if you were to look at that, like you'd be like, I don't know, or whatever that is. But it's actually much more impressive when you realize this is the foundation for some of the Canaanite temples that would have stood there. Wow, a long, long time ago. 3,500, 3,700, potentially a long, long time ago they were there. And so they've dug down and they found the foundations of these Canaanite temples and so on. And then here's another one. So later on, the area came under Egyptian control. So this is actually an artist's rendering of what the the governor's house of the Egyptians actually looked like. You can see that right there. And so this one actually is in surprisingly good condition. If you take a look here, there's the foundations of the Egyptians in about the 12th BC of what it would have been the governor's place, and it would have been a place for taxation because they now controlled the area. Again, it's a really important junction. So the Egyptians had controlled up to that point, and they actually built this place. I'm sure they collected taxes and had troops stationed there and so on, but this was an important at that point. And then eventually it came under the Israelite control. So this is a sign just indicating that it's going to be Israelites. So after the Egyptians, the Israelites took over under David and Saul and David and Solomon and so on. And so if we look at this one, that doesn't actually look as impressive as the Egyptian one. It's just like, okay, it just looks like a bunch of dirt. But it's actually after what the Egyptians built. The Egyptians built not with stone, and with bricks, but they were pretty good at that. So their structure actually stood up better, which is interesting than the Canaanites that built, or the Israelites that built later. We'll see most of the time in Israel and practically everywhere in Israel, they always build with stone. It's stone, 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 stone. Everywhere you look, it's stone, but not the Egyptians. And the reason is, the Egyptians were not used to building with stone as much. They did build with stone, but they had the mud, they had the Nile, so they were also very adept at building with bricks and putting bricks together. I mean, as in the scripture, you remember there was the problem with the Pharaoh and Joseph and the whole thing of making the build with bricks and not allowing them to use straw. So the Egyptians knew if you put straw on the bricks, it makes it stronger, but the Pharaoh didn't care. I don't care. They've got to go find their own straw, their own stubble to do that. So this is a later structure. That was when it was under Israelite control. And eventually the Romans came along, and the Romans had a temple. So the Romans put a temple up on top. So we've had prehistoric people up there, we've had the Canaanites up there, then we had the Egyptians up there, then we have had the Israelites up there, and now we have the Romans built a temple up there. The structure of this looks slightly impressive. I still think the Egyptian one looks better, but it's certainly better than the Israelite one looks. But you can sort of see the foundation stones of some of the stuff. It's actually back here where you see some of those stones have fallen. That's actually where that temple actually was in Roman times. Speaking of Roman times, it's the Roman structures that are the things that are the most amazing. Part of the reason why I'm showing you all the pictures. So that's just an appetizer. What did the Romans build? Well, it was a major, major, major city. So let's go take a look. So from the top of the hill, not looking towards the Jordan, because remember the Jordan is what we're protecting. We can see down to the Jordan and then up the valley. The opposite direction, we can look and see the remnants, the ruins of the Romans. And so basically, these are the ruins of the Romans. So again, this is the model back at the beginning. And that's the hill that I've been talking about. Everything I showed you up to now has only been on the top of that little tiny hill right there. we've just been up on that. All the wall goes all the way around what the Romans did. So we can see that they had a much larger area that they worked with. And when you're on top of this hill, if you look this way, you'll see that there's a theater right there. You see that the sort of the odd shape right here? You see that? That was a Roman theater. So I took a picture from the top of this hill, looking back down this way, away from the Jordan River, towards that theater. So we're up on top, and we're looking down into the ruins of what the Romans had built. And you can see even from that distance, you can make out some of the seats. You see where the seats are? Yep. Yeah. So you can sort of see some of the seats and stuff of that particular structure. You can also see there's a whole lot of other stuff around it, and we'll talk about what some of that stuff is here in a second. So this is behind the theater, looking back towards the hill that I was on. You can actually see the hill right there. You see the hill up at the top there? So this is where we're down below. This is actually when we first came in. I took this picture. Pictures are out of order, but just this is down by the theater, looking at the back of the theater here. These are places you could go into the theater, although you could go in the front too. And then you can see the hill in the distance there. I just wanted to show you. See these additional structures here? These are supports here for another level. So when we look at the theater, we're going to see a level where most of the seats are there. Then we're going to see a level that's ruined. That's the level that's over on this side. But then there's a whole level missing that these supports supported all the way up. So there's actually 2 levels missing, and you only see 1 level. And even when you see the 1 level, you're like, that's pretty impressive. And there was 2 more levels beyond that. So this is actually going in the front, going into the front of the theater. And we're walking through the archways and so on. And there's a picture, there's your first picture of what it looks like on the inside. This is actually as you just come in the door, you're at the front, the stage is to your left, and you're looking, I just snapped that picture just at the very moment that I walked through the door, and you can see the seats going up. Now remember what I said, these is the bottom third level of seats. There's the ruined seats on the next level, and then there's another level above that. So up where the blue sky is, the blue sky wouldn't have been there. That would all have been more seats for the people to sit down. There again is another view. This is on the other side. Now the stage is to my right, and you can sort of see, like that. Look at the people. Look at the size of the people there. And remember, they're a third of the way up. They're a third of the way up that theater. There was 2/3 more above where they're standing, and yet you look and see how small they look at that point. Yeah.
People would hold.
4,000? That's just a guess? Yeah, very, very large, very large. We'd have something around here that would be as big as this, very big. But it was one of the major cities in the area. Yeah, very cool. And then there's the stage. So you can see now they've reconstructed it. So they put the wood on it there. You can see there. But these stones out front and so on, that was all there. They had lights and stuff all along the side there. And these columns are just part of the back. So they would make the back of the theater ornate and beautiful, but also any sound that would hit the back would then reverberate and come back up to the crowd listening. So it was like it would amplify. So if you look at if you were to look down when you were in the stands, you were look down, you would see the stage, and then you would see this wall, columns and wall in behind that also refracted the sound back up to you in the stands. Speaking of being in the stands, there's a picture there of being up in the stands. And remember, I'm only about a third of the way up in this particular theater. You can imagine that at the back so there's the stage. At the back, you have this thing that's going up in behind with ornate things, whatever, but it's going to reverberate the sound. But there's something else in the picture that's interesting that enables you to hear better. Can you see the other thing that's a little interesting? So we got the stage, we got the background, we got the seats all around. Is there any other thing you can see there that's like, okay, what's that about?
The part over to the side, is that?
That's a good guess. That's actually a remnant of what the back looked like. But yes, absolutely, it's a good guess. You see this area here where all the people are standing in the front? You know why that's there? They didn't do the plays there. They were up on the stage. So what would happen is if you would speak, it would hit that area and go up. So the angles were worked out, so it didn't matter if you spoke towards the crowd. If the sound wave hit here, it would hit and bounce up to somebody's ears. A little bit later on, it would hit in the middle and bounce up to their ears, or farther out, and it would bounce up to their ears. So it was like an amplifier. So they had the sound coming from the back, but they also had this area here. And it's really freaky, I got to tell you. It wasn't at this particular theater, but it was at another one in Caesarea Maritima, where we got some of the people in the group to go down to the front on the stage, and I was way up high in the back. And I said, okay, go ahead, talk. And they didn't whisper, they just talked in a normal, relatively quiet voice, and you could hear them. It was weird, freaky weird, because you're like, I should not be able to hear them that well, because they're so far away. But just because of the way that it's constructed, I'd be like, oh, wow, well, this is why they built it this way. You can totally tell.
How would they know to construct it that way?
Experience. They built a lot of these. Like every city that the Romans would build and the Greeks and before them would have these structures, and over time they learned this is how we make it to amplify the sounds. So you literally have stadiums where the people will be able to watch a play, and you would be able to have 10,000 people potentially in a stadium, a massive number of people, and everybody can hear. Now, obviously the people, they would project their voice, but it had the acoustics to make sure that everybody in the audience would be able to hear. This is another picture from the top. Okay, so this is sort of looking at the other side. And again, you look at the number of seats. It has the same kind of thing. I was noticing this the other day. It's got the steps down. If you actually see you can see right there. There's like little extra steps, like right there and there and there. It is exactly the same thing. If you go to the Acadia Festival Theater and they have those little extra steps going down so people can go down, that's exactly what they had. It's exactly the same. What we do in some of our stadiums, that's exactly what they had for people to be able to go up and down and sit. But look how massive that is. And it's the bottom 1/3 on one side, on 1/3 of the theater. The other thing that I'm going to make note of is you see over here, we're at the top of this area. You see the area over here with all the columns? See that? That's where we're going next. That's the gymnasium and the bathhouse for the Romans. So we're going to leave this theater here, and we're going to travel over to this area. So that's where we're going. And again, to orientate yourself, if we look at the picture here, we see the mountain in the background there, right? So we're about to go right next door to the theater, just sort of over to the left and then forward a little bit in order to get to the bathhouse and the gymnasium. So let's start that process. This is a picture where we're just about we're getting closer to the bathhouse. We're not quite there, to the gymnasium. We're just about there. But then when we get there, what we find is this is broken up into a number of areas. And so I'm just going to tell you about the number of areas. I'll have to read this. There's the Aphroterium, the dressing room. I'm going to show you the dressing room in a second, where you'd undress and store your clothes. There's the Palasteria, the gymnasium, where you could exercise, lift weights, and have your body oiled up for the whole procedure. There was the Caldarium, which is the hot room, steam, hot water, hot plunge bath, steam, like a Turkish bath, all the rest of it. Then you have the Tepidarium, where you would kind of cool off, and we even use the word today, tepid. Oh, that's pretty tepid water, but that's from Tepidarium, where you could recover. The water was neither too hot nor too cold. And then you had the Frigidarium, where we actually get our word fridge from, which was the cold room. And I wondered, I had to look up with the Frigidarium. I'm like, where do you get the cold water from? And where we got the cold water from was the Romans would get springs on the outside of the town, and they would run from a cold spring, they would run an aqueduct into the town, and they would take for the Frigidarium, they would take the icy cold water from that aqueduct before it went anywhere else, and put it right into the Frigidarium location, where people could take a cold plunge into the water. And they would, of course, go back and forth between the different ones. You get cold, tepid, oh, so hot, back to tepid, back to cold, like what order, you could do it whatever order you want. I actually read that some people would do it one way, some people another. Anyway, so we're going to see those things now. So this is entering the gymnasium area. You see the columns here, and this is a wide open area where you could do gymnastics, or you could do lift weights, or you could wrestle, or whatever. So this whole area here was where people would be active and doing things. You will notice, you see the little doorways there? If you could, I don't know if you can see them. There's little doors right there along the edges. You see those little doors? Those are the changing locations I mentioned earlier. So those changing locations were right off sort of the main gymnasium area where people are being active and exercising and so on. So you could go in there and change, put your clothes there and so on. So I decided, just because I was there, I was like, oh, I want to go. The rest of nobody else did this, but I'm like, those changing rooms, those look really cool. So everybody else sort of stayed out of the gymnasium area, and I'm like, I'm going to go look at a changing room. So basically what I did is I went and I just went into it, and there really wasn't a lot to it. So I'm inside the room there right now. But you can see that there is a bench area, right? There would be a place for you to put your clothes or whatever as you change. And it was just a lovely little changing area before you went out to the gymnasium part and then started to go through the procedure with regards to the pools.
Did you wrestle, or what did you do?
Nobody wrestled in this particular case. There were some other sites where we got on fake horses and did some wrestling and some crazy stuff, but pretended we were shooting arrows and things. But we didn't do anything too weird in this particular location. This is from inside the changing room, looking back out into the gymnasium area. And so you can see everybody else sort of stayed out there. And you're looking through the doorway. Your clothes would have been in here, and then you're about to go out the door to do your activities or whatever. So this is where you would do that out there. So then, here's the gymnasium part. You see the very intricate tile on the ground. So that's all from, I believe, from the Roman period, and they did all this very, very intricate, small little different colored stones on the bottom. So this would have been very beautiful at the time. It looks fine now. It's a very pretty pattern, but this whole area would have been covered where you would have been doing your activity with this tile. I think I might have I have a close-up to give you a little better view of how intricate. And this by far was by no means the most beautiful tile we saw. We saw some absolutely amazing locations with tile, but this was kind of cool because it was like gym tile, you know what I mean? Like it was like this is where the people were actively exercising over the top of what you're seeing right now. They were fighting, they were wrestling, they were doing whatever, lifting weights, they were doing whatever right over top of that specific tile. And of course, we mentioned about the pools. So here's one. This is not a hot pool. I suppose it could have been the cold pool, although it might have been the tepidarium. You can see that it's just got the steps that would lead down into it. So this whole area here would have been filled with water, and you would have stepped down from this side into the pool. So this was either the cold one, the frigidarium, or the tepidarium. I don't know if they told us which one. It might be the tepidarium. It wouldn't shock me if it's the tepidarium. We'll see the other ones in a second. So then the other ones, which is really interesting, you see all of this is the caldarium. So this was a pool at one point. You see all of the pipes, they're like little columns, and all of the other stones sort of put together. So what this is these held up the floor of the pool. This is why there's so many of them. So you can see how many there are there. So basically between them, they would have had some type of stone, marble, or something, whatever was strong. They would have had stone in between each of those, and it would have been sealed. And these pipes held up the floor of the pool, and then they had hot air that would go underneath. So they had slaves would be outside with a fire. It would be like a chimney. The hot air would come underneath the floor of the pool and up the walls of the pool, and then come out. So it was almost like you were in the middle of a furnace. It's just that the pool was in there. You could be in the pool, and it was an absolutely super hot. So they could make it as hot as they want, as the hot air would go between. And you can even see on the side there some of the channels for the hot air to flow. So I imagine that the fires would have been absolutely huge. And there's another one. I don't know if that's the same one, but again, probably something like a frigidarium. So again, there would have been another pool for that. Of course, you have to use the facilities sometimes when you're at the gym. And so this was a picture I took of the toilets, or what was left of the toilets in the gymnasium area. There was off to one side. You see along the side there. You see sort of things that are kind of broken up along there. That's that's where the toilets would have been, along that wall. So there was no privacy. You were right next to your neighbor when you were, and apparently I read there was no privacy with regards to men and women. Men and women, whatever, you just all, yep, nope, just go in, lift your robes up, away you go. Like, yeah, apparently we're all, I think the women were on one side and the men were on another, but I don't know. What are you?
I was surprised we didn't have change rooms, because I didn't think the weddings had modesty.
Well, they
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Why would you have a change room?
Well,
You
I
do
think
everything else?
the change room was partially because you weren't going to be wearing your finery, and you had a lot of layers of clothes and things, and you would want that stored in a certain spot, and then you put on other clothes. It's sort of like we do today, even like you go to the gym, you're not going to wear your street clothes, you'd store them in a locker, or whatever. They had the same kind of thing. So they would strip down, basically strip to, I don't know, nothing I would assume, and then they would start the gym process. Yeah, yeah. But this was in the gymnasium, the bathhouse area. But there was another one. They would be all over town. So you had to pay a little bit to get into the gym, the bathhouse area. But there would be others in the town that would be free. So I'm going to show you another one that was free. Basically, this is the same kind of thing. You can actually, this one actually has the toilet still there. You see the stones sticking out of the wall? See the toilets? And here's the close-up, so you can actually see. You can actually see what they would sit on. So they were like stone, stone, stone. You'd sit between them, and you see underneath how it's kind of like, it's darker, whatever, like you see underneath the seats. There was water flowing under there. So as you did the business, then the water would come and take whatever you did away. So it would be flowing directly underneath all of the people. And to clean yourself off, you see there's a little thing on the front there. So your feet are here, but there's another little channel. That channel was for your hands and stuff to clean yourself off, whatever. So you could dip your hands in the front. You didn't want to dip your hands in that dirty water in behind, but that water in the front was much cleaner. So there was a little stream going on the front to clean yourself off, and there was the big stream. And each of those things, and you'd sit down. I had a picture of somebody sitting down, and I thought, I don't know if I'll show that in church, but anyway, just kind of, this is bad enough. But anyway, so this is one from somewhere else, but the one that was in the bathhouse gymnasium area would have been exactly the same. Now we're coming back out of the gym. We're actually headed sort of in the direction back towards the theater at this point, and you can see some of the columns still there. This is going to give you a little better idea of where we were. So we were up here in the theater, up in here. Okay, and so I took pictures looking this way and looking that way. We have just went from the theater over to the bathhouse area over here. So we came from here, we went over to here, we went through all that. There's the changing rooms. You can actually see the little sections there. Those are the changing areas there along the side. The bathrooms at the back there, and then we're coming back out here. And we're about to go down this road here. This is one of the major thoroughfares in the city. And do you see all of the orange little tiny blocks along the side? You see all those? Those are all shops. So this is a shopping district. So we've come out of the bathhouse. We're about to go down this road. The hill is over here. So where we started, up on the hill over here. We're about to go down this road. There's all kinds of shops along the side, and even a circular area of shops over here. And then when we get done doing this section, we're going to take a turn to the right here and go down this road here, which has a bunch of temples and a bunch of places for people to worship. So let's go down the main thoroughfare. And so here's the road. You can again actually see the hill in the background. So we're now headed away from the theater, which is behind us, to the right, and the bathhouse was just sort of almost to our left. And we're going down the road. Now, one thing to notice about this road, which I find very interesting, this road, you see how well constructed it is?
And no potholes.
It's got no pothole. Exactly. Right. No, that's right. Exactly. Because I believe this road was laid down not too long before there was a major catastrophe in the town. We went to some other Roman towns, and the wagons had gone over the roads so much that literally the ruts would be like that in the stone. Now, the Roman wagons were heavy, but they had rolled over those roads. You imagine how many hundreds of years you'd have to roll down a road to begin to put a rut that big in a stone that was meant to be on a road, right? They didn't put stones on the road that were weak. It was a strong stone on the road. But this one, look how well, and it's got a little, these are sort of stones at the top. The water's going to drain off here. Right? It's very clean road, and any water that comes on, some of it will go to the right, some of it to the left. We still kind of build roads in that way. It's very good. You can see the columns along the side. Now, the traffic would travel on the roads if you're doing a wagon or horses or whatever. But if you're shopping, you don't want to be on the road. So what are these columns for? Where there's a walkway between the columns and the stores. So there's the main road down the center. Then we got a bunch of columns with a thing protecting us. It's sort of like a mall. And then we'll see the stores will be off to our left. So let's take a look at that. So there we are. So the road's still over here on this side. And we've now kind of moved to our left. And what we have is we have the walkway, the beautiful walkway. The columns are here. And the stores are going to be on our left. So as we walk down this really fancy sidewalk, it's going to be beautifully decorated, columns, it's covered, and then we're just going to go, fish? Nope, not interested in fish today. Oh, okay, rope, baskets, pottery, grain, like each of the stores is going to have something different. Yes?
Why is the sidewalk about the same width as the street?
They had very lovely, well, look at our malls. I mean, in some ways, it's sort of like a mall we would have, where we have fairly wide areas for people to walk, and then they put the stores along the side. Romans did it first. Lovely wide area for people to walk, because there'd be a lot of people shopping, a lot of stuff going on. Now, one other thing we'll note, you see the little tile at the bottom on this section here? That's the Roman stuff. But you see this marble over on the other side? You see the marble? There's marble there and there. That's Byzantine. So when the Byzantines came along, they were like, we don't like the Roman stuff. Did everybody ever do that in your house? Oh, I don't like that wood. We're going to paint it. Or let's put the carpet over it. Like, I mean, there's times where nowadays people will redecorate houses and they'll go, I can't believe they painted this floor. This is beautiful wood. Well, this is what we do. We start to cover stuff up. So the Byzantines like the marble better. So they covered up all the Roman stuff on the bottom. So that's what's going on there. So if we take a look here, there's what the Roman, what are you going to call it? It's like a sidewalk. It's like a mall, whatever. And you see this center square here? A lot of the businesses would have information about what they were selling and so on right out front of their store. So you're walking along and you just look down and it tells you, oh, they're into lamps. This store sells lamps. Oh, they look good. Oh, they're from wherever. I mean, whatever information they just like today, whatever information they want to give you, right there in front of the store. And you'd be like, oh, I need another lamp, or we need a pot, or we better get some fish, or whatever it is, or a basket.
I can't read it.
They could. So that was out here, and you can see there was a little door, and then in the side there, the store wasn't that big. Like the stores were relatively small. That's inside the store, right there. So it wasn't very well lit, but you can see they even had the tile. The beautiful tile, because this was the responsibility of the store owner. Whoever owned that store would make just like stores do today. I mean, you they got fancy things going on. They would have fancy floors, fancy walls. They'd have all the merchandise there, just like we would today. And so you can see how pretty that looks if you kind of get a look at it. Very, very intricate work.
Isn't it a picture of Jesus in the middle?
A picture of a person, isn't it?
There's something in the circle in the middle.
Yeah.
Almost looks.
Yeah, I think it's a king or something. I don't know what they're selling.
Okay, it almost looks.
I think he's got a ship in his hand or something, so maybe it's fish. I don't know. It's hard to tell what's exactly in his hand.
Oh, from a distance, it looked like a crown of thorns.
Yeah, no, I think it's a king. I'm not sure. So now we're now getting to the bottom of the street, and we're going to turn right on another road. And as we go along that road, there's a bunch of temples and places to worship. On the right-hand side of that particular road. And so you can see the columns there. There's not a lot left of the temples. There's a few things left of where they would actually have some of the images and some of the stuff. So you can see here, you see the empty, it's like a platform. It's kind of empty. There's nothing there. It's just like, okay, there's something could have been there. There was something there. So they would have basically idols or whatever, different gods and goddesses along there. So as you were walking along, you've got this beautiful ornate place, these beautiful columns, and then you would have pictures of gods and goddesses that could be worshipped right along the street. This is facing the street. Like you can see how close that is right there. Now they had other temples farther in, so you could go then participate in rituals and whatever, but this is right on the street, beautiful statues and so on. There was a massive destruction happened there. What's fascinating is when the destruction happened with the massive earthquake, they did sort of rebuild part of the town, but a lot of it they just left as rubble. And so when the archaeologists and the people came back to sort of look at the town, what they discovered was a lot of stuff that had fallen in some of these massive earthquakes was still in the same spot. So we had that all of these columns and buildings that had fallen down and smashed into the street are in exactly the same place they were when the earthquake happened in 748 or something, like that in that range. So when these massive earthquakes happened, we had major destruction. You can actually see some of the columns on the side there that have tilted over. So those have not moved in 1,300 years, something like that. They've been that way for a long, long time because they never moved them. You can see the impact when they hit the ground because these are massive columns. So you can actually see the stones, and again, they just left them where they were. Because the ground is shaking in an earthquake, the ground starts to get a little loose, especially depending on the. We think of the earth as solid, but depending on where you are and depending on the composition of the soil, it can start to liquefy and it can get very, very loose. Happens a lot in Japan, Tokyo, and different places, but it happens almost anywhere. Water will start spurting up out of the ground. It starts to wave. It gets squishy, whatever. When those columns came down, the earth was relatively squishy at that point because you can see the rocks, when it made an impact, it dug right into the street, crushed the stones underneath and pushed the other stones out of the way. So it had a massive impact on the thing itself. There's another one. You can actually see how it's kind of pushed the stones out of the way there, all the way along the street. So this is an area of the town that they never rebuilt. They basically, when these earthquakes happened, the people just went to other parts of the town and left all of the rubble and all of the stuff. Now they did take some of the stuff. In particular, they went after the marble. So there wasn't a lot of marble left, but they didn't care about the Roman tile and stuff and the columns. They left a lot of that stuff. So that's why when I showed you before, didn't seem to be very much marble there. That's because they took a bunch of it and used it because it was more valuable, or they did something with it or whatever. But a lot of the Roman stuff was left where it was. And there's the big picture that I'll end with. There's a big picture of the destruction that happened on that street. And you can see the columns that have come down and smashed into the ground. And so this was a very important town in the days of the Canaanites were there, the Egyptians were there, an important place in Jesus' day. It was important, David and Saul and so on. So we're back at that 700, approximately 800 BC, all the way to Jesus' day. And it wasn't until so it's well over 1,000 years of major importance as a town that was used to administer the area, which most of us, I didn't realize until we got there. They basically said to us, "We're going to Bet Shan." I'm like, "Great, what's Bet Shan?" I have no idea. And then we walked in and I was like, "Well, how do you do?" Well, there you go. And part of the reason that so much is still there is because, as I said, after the earthquakes, it pretty much became a small town, but they didn't dig a whole bunch of stuff up. It was a complete mess. Did you find that interesting?
Different.
Great? Yeah.
We can't go